Fuel surcharges for flights operated by Korean carriers have more than tripled for April, driven by a surge in global oil prices and ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East.
국제유가가 치솟고 중동 지역 긴장이 지속되면서 이번 달 국내 항공사 항공권에 부과되는 유류할증료가 전달과 비교해 최대 3배 이상 인상됐습니다. Alright, so I guess traveling is way more expensive now.
It is indeed. So, as an example, Korean Air has raised its international one-way fuel surcharge to between 42,000 and 303,000 won for April, compared with 13,500 to 99,000 won in March. So it has more than tripled. And that's international one-way fuel surcharge. And you know, I was actually just recently looking at flights to Vancouver for the summer. And I noticed looking about like a week ago. It was less than a week ago.
Okay.
So less than a week ago. And I also just checked yesterday. Flights were at least 100,000 won more expensive from just a week ago.
그럴 수 있죠.
Yeah.
예, 왜냐하면 지금 유류할증료가 편도 기준으로 국제선 이제 대한항공 같은 경우에 42,000원에서 많게는 또 30만 원 정도까지 이 유류할증료가 붙습니다. 근데 한 달 전까지만 해도 이게 13,000원에서 한 99,000원 정도의 범주였는데 3배 정도 올랐으니까 당연히 전체적인 비행기표 가격도 지금 말씀하신 것처럼 뭐 10만 원 이상 충분히 올랐을 수 있죠. Yeah. All right. So obviously it's going to get more expensive if you go on these long haul flights, and if it's closer, less so. But nonetheless, it's affected everything. Let's have a look at the term fuel charge or fuel surcharge. 이게 바로 유류할증료가 되겠습니다. surcharge 하면은 추가 요금인데요. 유류할증료, fuel surcharge.
I want to say in French, I believe sur is on top, right?
Sur.
Yeah, sur means on top. So if you think of like a charge, well, on top of that charge, it's like an extra charge.
Yes, that is true. 그러네요. 자, 그다음에 이제 항공사라는 뜻의 carrier.
Carrier, literally, you can think of it as one who carries, right? So like it could be a person, but in this case, it is an airline because airlines carry people from one place to another. Of course, we also hear this in telecommunications, right? So we'll hear like various telecom carriers as well, as if they're carrying information from one place to another as well. But we think of a person, or it could be a company that carries things or people from one place to another.
지금은 맥락상 항공사예요. 그런 의미로 제일 많이 쓰는 것 같기는 한데 이게 또 일반 뭐 맥락에 따라서 다른 회사도 될 수 있지만 우리가 바이러스 얘기할 때는 또 이제 그런 바이러스의 매개체, 보균자라는 의미도 가지고 있으니까 그거 참고하시면 되겠습니다. What about geopolitical tensions?
So geopolitical, we're talking about politics that are international or related to geography. Usually, conflicts between countries that are close to one another or have geography reasons to be in relationships or to have bad relationships. And in this case, when you're talking about geopolitical tension, you are indeed talking about negative political relationships. And tension, anytime we're talking about tension, we're talking about something that could go bad very quickly. And if you think of like a rope, or a string, a line of some sort, if it's straight, then the line has a lot of tension. If it kind of dips down, then it doesn't have tension, right? It's loose and it has slack or leeway. But if a line is straight and is being pulled really, really hard, then it has tension and it's much easier to break because of the tension. So now if it breaks, now we have a problem, right? So that's where I'm trying to say the tension it can lead to something worse, essentially, if it breaks.
So in your example, you're talking about the 팽팽함 when you say tension. 네. 그 팽팽함이 깨지면은 또 큰 문제가 생길 수도 있으니까요. 보통 tension 하면은 이렇게 뉴스에서는 긴장 상태를 말하고요. geopolitical, that's geographic and political. 그래서 지정학적이 되겠죠. 다시 읽어보겠습니다. Fuel surcharges for flights operated by Korean carriers have more than tripled for April, driven by a surge in global oil prices and ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. Here's our next headline.
2 Australian states have introduced free public transport through June to discourage driving amid high fuel prices driven by the Middle East conflict, while the federal government has halved the national fuel excise tax for 3 months to provide financial relief to motorists.
중동 전쟁으로 연료비가 상승하자 호주 내 2개의 주가 시민들의 자가용 이용을 줄이기 위해 대중교통 요금을 6월까지 무료화하기로 했고 호주 연방정부는 운전자들의 경제적 부담을 덜기 위해 3개월간 유류소비세를 절반으로 인하하기로 결정했습니다. We have 3 stories out of the 5 altogether related to the effects of the Middle East conflict.
Yes.
This is another one of those.
Absolutely. And yeah, it just shows how much it is affecting the world, essentially. And yeah, indeed, Australia as well. 2 of their states, one of them being Victoria, which is home to Melbourne, is offering free travel through April and all the way until the end of June, I think it is. So
that's public transportation.
Yeah, public transportation in order for people to essentially give incentive to take public transport rather than taking their cars everywhere, which of course burns more fuel, which we're experiencing a shortage in.
The other state would be Tasmania, which is obviously an island state in the south of Australia. But these 2 regions, as you said, will be offering certain benefits to people using public transport because at the end of the day, the government is saying, leave your cars at home. The fuel prices are too high. 자, 그러면 한번 표현을 보도록 하겠습니다. To discourage driving.
If you're trying to discourage something, then you're essentially trying to give like negative incentive to make people not do something.
Yeah.
So normally people might do this thing and you're saying, okay, well, we want to give you a reason to not do the thing that you are doing or that you would be doing.
To discourage something은 무엇을 못하게 하다, 말리다, 막다 이런 의미가 있는데요. discourage driving이니까 운전하는 것을 좀 이제 말리는 거죠. 여러분 차는 가급적이면 집에 두시고 대중교통 이용하세요. 그래서 빅토리아 주에서는 4월 동안 대중교통 무료로 이용할 수 있고 타스메니아는 6월까지. 네.
And of course, another way that we often hear the word discourage is sort of like an emotion, the way that you feel.
Yeah.
So maybe if something bad happened, then you might feel discouraged, like you have less hope. So before you might have had hope for something, but now, oh, my hope is gone because something happened and now I feel discouraged.
좌절감을 느낄 때 수동태로 I feel or I am discouraged 이렇게 얘기할 수도 있겠죠. So to be discouraged is the form I'm talking about here when you're talking about your feelings and you're really let down.
Yeah, and a common thing that people will say if something bad happens, then they'll say, oh, don't be discouraged. Like, keep your chin up or have hope.
Yeah. And the opposite would be to encourage someone.
Yes, exactly.
그래요. 그 다음에 이제 중간에 동사 halve가 나오는데요. halve. 반으로 줄이다 라는 뜻이 되겠죠. 캐나다에서 발음 어떻게 하죠, 이거? 북미권 발음으로?
Halved?
네, 이렇게. 그리고 영국식으로 하면 halved가 되겠습니다. 가운데 A가 어쨌든 양쪽 발음에서 다 좀 길어요. 그냥 half는 어떻게 발음해요?
Half.
저는 half. 그래서 요거랑 그 다음에 이제 동사가 발음이 다르다. 자, 그 다음에 excise tax.
An excise tax is a tax that the government places on items. Usually they're consumer items that people use often
Yep.
so that they can collect some money and use it for government purposes, but also just so that it might also be to discourage people from doing something. So as an example, you might have an excise tax on tobacco to discourage people from smoking. So it's, it could be taxes for, some will argue that it's because the government needs money. Some will argue that, no, it's because they don't want you to do certain things.
excise, excise tax라는 것은요. 특정 품목에 부과되는 개별 소비세, 그런 소비세를 얘기합니다. 다시 읽어볼게요. Two Australian states have introduced free public transport through June to discourage driving amid high fuel prices driven by the Middle East conflict, while the federal government has halved the national fuel excise tax for 3 months to provide financial relief to motorists. Here's our final headline.
Paintings by Renoir, Cezanne, and Matisse, worth millions of euros, have been stolen from a museum near the Italian city of Parma, marking the latest high-profile heist following the brazen daylight robbery of priceless jewels from the Louvre last October.
이탈리아 파르마 인근의 한 미술관이 르누아르와 세잔, 마티스 등 수백만 유로에 달하는 거장들의 회화 작품을 도난당했습니다. 이는 지난 10월 대낮에 루브르 박물관에서 발생한 대범한 보석 탈취 사건에 이어 벌어진 눈에 띄는 유사 절도 살해입니다. Alright, so what happened?
Yeah, so 4 masked men entered the Magnani Rocca Foundation Villa on the 22nd of March, and they made off with Les Poissons by Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Still Life with Cherries by Paul Cézanne, and Odalisque on the Terrace by Henri Matisse. And they estimate that the stolen paintings have a combined value of 9 million euro, which would be like 13.2 billion won.
와우. 그래요. 4명의 복면을 쓴 절도범이 이렇게 또 어떻게 보면은 참 대범한 그런 절도 사건을 벌였군요. high profile heist라고 표현을 하고 있는데요. heist가 여기서 말하는 그런 절도 사건일 테고 high profile? What does that
High
mean?
profile is something that is famous or that is well known, something that everyone has kind of heard about. It might be in the news,
Right.
So something that's been talked about as of late, but pretty much just something that everyone knows.
누구나 다 알만한이라는 뜻이에요. high profile. 반대로 low profile이라는 표현도 있죠. 그러면 좀 덜 알려진다 아니면 일부러 좀 사람들의 이목을 받지 않으려고 할 때 keep a low profile 이렇게 말할 수도 있는데요. This heist was a high profile heist because, well, first of all, it was
The Louvre Museum,
yeah,
famous museum, and it was in the daytime.
그렇죠. 자, 가장 이제 최근에 있었던 절도 사건은 이탈리아에 있었던 마냐니 로카 파운데이션 빌라에서 벌어진 사건이고요. 이 4명의 절도범이 3개의 작품을 훔쳤습니다. 우리 돈으로는 합해서 한 157억 원에 해당하는 그런 가치를 가지고 있다고 해요. Now, what about priceless jewels?
Something that is priceless, it's so expensive that no amount of money in the world could really justify the value of something. So basically, even if you have this much money, then the person with that possession would not be willing to sell it to you. So it doesn't matter how rich you are, this is something that you are not capable of buying.
그러니까 여기서 말하는 priceless는 값을 매길 수 없을 정도로 정말 가치가 있다라는 뜻이네요.
Yeah, typically it's just saying it's so expensive, or it could be just something that's not for sale. Like, if the best example I'll give is once again the Mona Lisa. Like, if you were to be in possession of the Mona Lisa, it doesn't matter how much money someone were to offer the Louvre Museum. Well, I'll give you $15 trillion. I mean, all the money to make you the richest person in the world, but they would still just say no because it's not
priceless.
something that you can sell. It's priceless.
그렇죠. 대단히 귀중하다라는 의미가 되겠네요. Well, they say it only took 3 minutes for these 4 robbers to take these art pieces.
Well coordinated.
But also very bad and brazen and also in daylight again.
Yeah.
자, 다시 한번 보겠습니다. Paintings by Renoir, Cézanne and Matisse worth millions of euros have been stolen from a museum near the Italian city of Parma, marking the latest high-profile heist following the brazen daylight robbery of priceless jewels from the Louvre last October. All right, that's it for the headlines this morning with Jason Lee.